Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Biggleswade Town Council meeting this evening. This is the usual reminder to meeting attendees that this is a formal meeting. I can advise that members of the public will be given an opportunity to speak during the public open session, but not at other times. The meeting is being filmed, but by being present, attendees are deemed to have agreed to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings. I can advise that attendees should not disclose any personal information of individuals, as this would infringe the data protection rights of that individual. And as always, please can everyone mute their microphones when not speaking. So in terms of first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Skilton, who may be attending online or maybe late, we're not sure. And we also have Councillor Gilcher, who's attending online, I think, Catherine, so just bear that in mind. I don't think we've got anyone else not here. So next item then on the agenda, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest in relation to any item on the agenda, pecuniary or otherwise? No. So town mayor's announcements are just two items really. On the 17th of March, we held the civic service at St Andrew's Church. Really enjoyable service. Very grateful to the church and so Reverend Liz and Rosemary for supporting us there, and also particularly wanted to thank a friend of her involvement in that and making it happen. Really good and enjoyable. I think we've learned a few things as well around how things work there and what works and what doesn't, but it was a really enjoyable event. So if you have the opportunity to come next time, that would be great. And second thing, on Friday last week, I attended the Beaumont home in Shortmead Street. Again, another old people's home, another facility. Really nice to visit the old people there. Enjoy. Great to see what the work that they do there. Of trying to get around and seeing some of the facilities around. So that's all from me. Next item is public open session. So it's the adjourn for up to 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions or address the council. Hello. Would you, we're going to check the microphones on first off. Would you mind giving your name, please?
So my name's Carol Birtwistle and I'm secretary to the Biggleswade Community Safety Group. So okay, I've come here following our meeting yesterday to raise a few. The first one is a request. During COVID, you very kindly held some stock of alarms, Faraday cases, and other things that we usually charge people for in the offices here for the public to pick up. We're finding it difficult to interact with people who can't come to our events. So we'd like you to be a drop-off point for people to collect those items again, if possible. So we'd like you to consider that. My second point is we would like to arrange a memorial for Amanda Cawthorne, who you may remember was the chair of Biggleswade Community Safety Group, who died from cancer about a year ago. We were looking at getting funding for a memorial bench, but we would have to match fund the grant, and we felt we couldn't really do that with the funds that we've raised from the public. So we wanted to explore if there are other ways that we might do this. We spoke to the community gardens and asked if we could put a plaque on one of their gardens, and they felt that they didn't want to go down that route because it would encourage other people to do the same. So we thought, could we come up with another solution? And then a thought about maybe naming a new road in one of the new developments, in the housing development after her. So that's my second point. My third point is that Preen have recently purchased a knife bin. Now, on Community Safety Group, I've been liaising with police since November 2021 to try and get a knife bin into Biggleswade. And we had agreement that they would move one of the ones from Shefford to Biggleswade, but they wanted us to pay £200 towards the removal costs. And again, as a charity, we thought that was a little steep. And then as we were about to agree that, Preen just announced that they bought their own bin and they've mounted it on the street facing the road on South Mead Street. So my request is, can you promote that on your website and any newsletters so that people are aware of that existence of the knife bin as an amnesty point for the knives to be removed? And our plan as the group is we will review how that progresses over the next 6 months. And if there seems to be need to be capacity for further knife bins, then we'll try and grab the one from Shepherd that police have offered us as well. That one we would place at the fire station. We've got agreement with the fire station that they would host it on Chestnut Avenue. And then my fourth point was about the bulk chargers for EVs not working, but I've just parked there today and they are working now. So it's been about a month where only 2 are working. A big concern for myself and other EV drivers. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think probably the best thing to do there is if we'll note your comments at this stage and then formulate how we respond and what action the council might be able to take. Okay, thank you. Anyone else, Catherine? Don't think so. No. Okay, so the next item on the agenda then is item 5, which are invited speakers. So we have Tom and Will from Tritax Cemetery. So welcome. Good to see you here, and we'll I guess over to you.
To get used to pressing the button again and turning it off, so forgive me if I don't. Thank you very much for inviting us to speak again. And I was talking to Councillor Russell earlier, and I think it's just over a year since we last came to see you, actually just before going to the planning committee. So I think it was March 23. So here we are again. I think we've only got 10 minutes, so wrap it on. The reason for coming back is to give you an update on progress at what we call Cemetery Park Biggleswade, that's the employment, latest employment consented area at Stratton Business Park. I think if we go to the next slide, please, Clark, that'd be great. I will race through some of these because of time, and you've seen them before, but I'm conscious there's some new faces, so I just wanted to give a quick background on who we are and what we do. So very simply, Will and I are at Tritax Cemetery. I'm a director and shareholder there. We are the development arm of Tritax Big Box REIT, which is a FTSE 250 fund, £5.2 billion fund that invests solely in the warehouse market. So Tritax own about 80 assets. So the Co-op, for example, at Stratton Business Park, we own. We have Ocado, Tesco, various other clients that you'll see on some future slides, and we are we like to think of ourselves as a responsible developer and a responsible fund. So we're very focused on the green credentials of developments, which we'll come on to later on, and many of you have seen examples of it at Cemetery Park, at Stratton Business Park. Next slide, please. So just very high level there. Just over 5 billion fund, as I mentioned. The rental income is 225 million a year, and that goes to shareholders and is reinvested in the fund. We've got a pipeline of nearly 10 million square feet in terms of development, and the fund effectively provide the capital to what we do at Cemetery Park at Stratton in terms of developing the warehouses there, and there are currently 78 assets across the portfolio. If you want to look in a bit more detail, there's a very good website with more details on that, or I'm happy to answer any more questions. Next slide, please. Very quickly, an example of some of the names that you'll all recognise and see on the streets. Many retailers on there, and some big names who occupy our warehouses, and a few of them on there are at Stratton Business Park as well in Biggleswade. Next slide, please. So the reason we're here today, will actually talk about the consent that we received last year for the latest phase of Cemetery Park. And the reason we're here to update you on that. I'm just going to give you a bit more background just to remind again the old faces that I know reasonably well and some of the new faces. So you'll see there the Co-op distribution centre, which is a 660,000 square foot centre on about 50 acres. We signed that deal with Co-op in about 2018, having bought the site in 2017. So we've been involved in Biggleswade for quite a few years now. We've retained ownership of that because, as we're a real estate investment trust, as I've said before, we develop the assets, the rent goes into the fund, and we take a long-term interest in the locality, the town, and making sure that these assets and the business parks present in an appropriate manner. So Co-op have their lease started in 2021, so they've got about 1,000 employees there, and they distribute to the wider southeast. And I know some of you have been on tours of that building with us. I'm very happy to show anyone else round if you're interested. Europe's biggest freezer is in the end of that. It's about 100,000 square feet. So it's quite an interesting thing to see, and it's absolutely freezing, quite rightly so. So that development alone, that first phase, was about £100 million worth of development in Biggleswade. So it's quite a considerable investment, and Co-op have committed to Biggleswade for 20 years. And as far as we're aware from talking to them and going around, they're very happy here and are operating well. If we move on to the next slide, please. I mentioned sustainability credentials. So we now, in phase 2, which I'll come to in a second, we now develop all our buildings to net zero carbon in construction, and have done that for quite a few years. We were the first major developer to announce that in 2021. And so all our new buildings are net zero. We're just in the process of signing with the Co-op to install some PV across their entire roof. We're all aware of the limitations of the grid, especially in Biggleswade, and there's obviously the new primary substation going in, providing additional grid power. But it's the export that's very often the issue on these properties, because they're very large solar schemes. But clearly a much better place to put PV rather than fields, in my view. And we developed this to BREEAM Excellent as well, and it's EPC-A, so it's a very sustainable development. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Tom. That brings us on to phase 2, who many of you visited on a lovely summer's evening last year, and including getting cold in Europe's largest freezer as well. So off the back of phase 1 and Co-op, we developed 4 buildings across phase 2. I'll start with Unit 5, which was pre-committed to Bond International prior to construction. They're now very operational. I'm sure you've seen a few of their vans driving around. We then let Unit 4 to Noatum Logistics, and they do high-end fashion logistics. Unit 3 was let to Bowman Ingredients. As you will know, as many of you will know, they're on Stratton Business Park already in Atlas House. So we provided the opportunity for them to expand into a larger building and continue to have their operations in Biggleswade. And finally, Bidfood. They have let's say they have a mini Co-op and a slightly smaller freezer in there. So that was effectively phase 2, and off the back of the success of phase 2, where all of the buildings were let prior to the completion of the buildings, we wanted to expand Symmetry Park Biggleswade, and that's where we submitted the 3rd phase, and that was probably that would have been November 2022. If you could move to the next slide. So phase 3, you will remember, we submitted that in November 2022, and we got the resolution to grant planning permission in April 2023, which Madeline, I remember you come into the presentation and giving your letter of support, which was well received. And then we
Can I just clarify that I was there as the representative of the town council?
Absolutely, yes, well noted. We eventually got the decision notice in December of this year, following the approval of the Section 106 agreement. So that includes £750,000 of Bosch contributions heading from the train station all the way into Stratton Business Park and further on into Symmetry Park, and also some public right-of-way contributions as well. But I think if we move to the next slide, what we're here to effectively present today is an amendment to the planning permission. And I'm gonna like Blue Peter, I'm gonna bring out a prop. So thank you for moving to the master plan. So as you can see on the screen, we are about to exchange tomorrow on an agreement for lease with Warburtons for a bespoke building of about 65,000 square feet, which is obviously a fantastic result for Biggleswade. It's in line with the huge amount of food businesses you want to locate here, and that means that once we can eventually complete start completing the buildings for phase 3, which is scheduled for Q3 of 2025. We've immediately got jobs there. So I think we'll touch on some of the application credentials in the Q&As, but effectively phase 3, it's slightly smaller due to the fact that Warburton's is a smaller building on a larger plot. It's bespoke, which means there's slightly less square feet, but it means there's security of jobs there. I think it's worth mentioning at this stage that also, if you look at Unit 9 directly below Warburton's, we are under offer to a local Biggleswade occupier. We can't name them right now, but again, the fact that we are able to expand Symmetry Park Biggleswade means that we are able to allow opportunities for companies that are already located in Biggleswade to grow and expand their operations without having to relocate. So hopefully when we come and see you in the next 6 to 12 months, next time, we'll be able to announce that. If we move to the next slide, I want to touch on the Community Benefit Fund as well. So I think all of you will be aware that the Kylands project, the Kylands play area is going very well and should be completed at the end of this month. And that was, just a reminder, that was £57,000 provided to upgrade the local play area. And off the back of the consent for phase 3, there will be further funds available for the Community Benefit Fund, and that will be allocated once the buildings start to complete towards the end of next year. If you move to the next slide, please. I think what we can touch on some of these elements in the Q&As as well, but just as a brief reminder, we are also doing some upgrades of Pegasus Drive as part of the planning consent. So we are amending the planning permission, and the upgrades still remain in place. So that includes if we move to the next slide, it probably is a bit more detail. Yes, here we go. So this is the widening of London Road and the entrance to the London Road roundabout off of Pegasus Drive, which means it's now going to be 2 lanes rather than 1, which helps to ease the traffic movements there. If we move to the next slide, this is the indicative bus route from the train station going all the way through Symmetry Park Biggleswade and through Stratton Business Park. So as part of this, we will be providing bus stops within Symmetry Park, and at the moment we've got if you include the phase 3 development, we would have 2,000 to 3,000 people working there at any one time. So we've had the buy-in from companies such as the Co-op and Noatum Logistics and Bid Food for that. So that's a 5-year program that we've committed to, and hopefully with the amount of businesses that are located on Stratton and Symmetry Park, that will be a service which will go on much longer than 5 years. If you move to the next slide, please. That's a snapshot of the public right-of-way upgrades we are also doing. So we are effectively creating a bridleway loop around the site. So that's free to the open public to use. I think we've got a final slide. It's a bit corny, but the future is bright and green. Just to wrap it up, in the fact that we are very pleased to announce that we've got another business coming to Biggleswade, and that's obviously a huge business that's well known in the UK, and it just shows the potential Biggleswade has to be such an area for growth for not only Biggleswade but Central Bedfordshire as well. When we speak to companies such as Warburton's, they are really pleased that there is space available in Biggleswade, and it's a place that they do want to invest. So we are obviously very grateful that the councils such as yourselves are in support of Symmetry Park, and obviously we are all very pleased to continue to develop in Biggleswade, and that's why we have initiatives such as the Community Benefit Fund to upgrade local play areas and whatever phase 3 allocation might be. Is there anything that you'd like to say, Tom?
I think that's covered everything. Again, we're excited to be involved with Biggleswade still, and this next phase is exciting, and the fact that Warburton's and a local business are committing here is really impressive, especially at this early stage in the development. And I'm interested, as I'm sure you are, in what the other businesses will be that will commit. But Q&A, I think, if there's any questions.
Okay, Councillor Woodhead.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. It's really helpful. And also a very belated thanks again for the tour of the Co-op warehouse last year. Really enjoyed it, and the Noatum warehouse as well. It was really interesting and seeing how it all sort of ticks basically. I guess really just one question I've got. I'm intrigued in around the sort of bus route idea that you proposed. Would that be looking at a local bus operator to run that, or would this be some broader scheme, or how would that perhaps integrate with existing sort of bus services? Because it's something we've kind of struggled with and grappled with, I think, in this part of the world, and yeah, just something that needs thinking through. But just any thoughts you've got on that, really?
Yeah, so the commitment is a 5-year commitment totaling the 760,000, I think it was, and yes, it's with a local operator is the plan. I mean, we've got a reasonable amount of detail in the section 106, but clearly, we'll need to work closely with the council to make sure that we're providing the right service to reflect what the employers and employees require on Stratton Business Park and Symage Park. So yes, so it should be the local operator. Yeah. That's how we usually do it. But again, I think it might be worth probably when there's a bit more detail on that to probably come out or even listen to any comments that you've got, because clearly, you guys live locally. So if we can learn from that, then great.
No, thanks. I mean, the only kind of response to that is if it can be integrated some way into a regular, service or whatever, I think would be worth looking into. I don't know what the outcome of that would be, but it's worth thinking about it as these ideas progress, basically.
I think, and I think the point is that we've committed a very large amount of money to this because I know it's very important to everyone around this table. It's very important to us as well and to our customers on the park, and they're actually quite excited about a bus service being introduced because at the moment it's under provisioned, quite frankly. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Strong.
Thank you. You've emphasised the net zero in terms of construction, etc. Is it the intention that the operating will be entirely net zero once it's all up and running with all the solar energy you're using and everything else?
Yeah, so we deliver the base building to net zero carbon in construction, and it's really, we encourage the tenants to operate as net zero carbon in operation. That's a completely separate element to ours, and we can't really control that, but we do encourage that. You'll find that some occupiers are more switched on to that than others, let's say, and probably more proactive in it. But in terms of your second question about the PV and the solar panels, if you remember, for phase 2, we invested considerable sums in the energy centre on site, which effectively has a clever box of tricks, which mixes the grid power, which is from green sources, plus the PV from the roofs, plus backup generation on site as well, just to provide a consistency of power to the occupiers on phase 2. So for the next phase, in terms of phase 3, we will have a private, what's called a ring main, around the site, feeding all the units. So it means that because of the limitations in the grid and the fact that at the moment, and this may change, but at the moment we can't export from this latest phase into the grid. So we've had to invest in our own network to allow power from the roofs of the individual units to be effectively electrons mixed and can be used by the other tenants on the site until we hopefully get some export at some stage.
Just to add to that, actually, as well as I was doing my research last night, as well as buying the loaf, that Warburtons do have net zero ambitions. So they are a net zero by 2050 company, and they also invest in renewable technology, and they've been pushing to ensure that what we're doing is, well, we already do it anyway, but I think one of the draws to Symage Park Biggleswade is the fact that we're already doing it, and we're pushing the boundaries as a developer to help their ambitions as well.
Yeah, and we also, so we provide quite a lot of EV charging points for cars on the car parks. We also duct the remainder of the car park to allow for 100% if that were ever needed in the future. And then also within the yards, there are ducts across entrances, and there's soft points around the yard, so that if they have electric vans or delivery vehicles in the future, then that's easily retrofitted. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Russell?
Can you just clarify my understanding of where we are? You got planning permission for phase 3, as you said. You've now got a tenant who required very definite provision to be able to run their business. So my understanding is you've rejigged what's on site so that you can have Warburtons on site, but then the other units will be different to what you envisaged. But what I'm understanding, I think, is that the rest of it, the Section 106 agreement and what you're going to do with the road and with the buses and all that has remained the same. So, and I think that means that the traffic movements wouldn't be any different. Is that right? Can you just clarify those key points for me, please?
Yeah, sure. So the revision to this is going from a 3-unit scheme, and the CGI, this is an aerial photo, and the CGI, so the 3 units on the left are what we have planning consent for currently as of December last year. So the amend to that planning consent is that we're going from 3 buildings to 5 buildings, and Section 106, everything else remains the same, all the contributions remain the same. The amount of square feet that we're delivering is reduced by about 100,000 square feet because there's some smaller buildings reflecting the requirements here. Yeah, and I think, yeah, I mean, really it's from a sort of timing point of view. You know, I suppose it's probably delayed our delivery slightly because of the occupiers by a few months, but not particularly. But yes, it's a slight amend to that application. The elevations are all the same, i.e. in line with our sort of corporate standards that you see on phase 2. We're still putting PV on the roofs. You know, we're still putting the yards in. We're still the landscaping still transfers through the site as you'd expect. You know, tree-lined avenues and things. So that all that's the same.
And you mentioned, I think, one of you, that you've got a bridleway around the outside of the site, but I think also you were upgrading the bridleway to the A1. Do I remember that? Because that's important from the fact that we know that Central Bedfordshire are actually discussing this evening whether to sell the site. But if Home Farm is developed, then with that development, there should be the bridle bridge over the A1. And my understanding is that what you're doing is taking the bridleway to the A1, ready for a possible future bridle bridge, not providing the bridle bridge. Listen to that.
No, hopefully not. Yeah, so what we've done effectively is that the bridleway currently, I can't remember the number of it off the top of my head, runs down to the A1 and is it's chopped off historically by the A1. Yeah. So we haven't done anything with that. It's a lovely 5 metre wide ride through on the edge of a field, basically, which is exactly what you want when you're riding a horse. The dead end is the issue. So what we've done is created a loop around our wider phase 2 and phase 3 site, so that actually instead of riding down towards the A1 and then back up, which I can't imagine many people do, they can actually ride the route around the site now, and that clearly is usable by footpath walkers as well. Yeah.
I think the issue for us is that particular bridleway that stops at the A1 is or should be the green wheel. And that's why we're pushing for the bridle bridge from Home Farm, so that we've got a proper green wheel route, because at the moment people have to come back into the outskirts of the town to get through. That's why I was asking the question.
And as you said, that the Home Farm development will have the responsibility to put that final connection in across the A1. We have also provided funding of nearly £200,000 to surface or improve surfacing on part of the footpath as well for accessibility. But clearly it's getting the balance right between ensuring it is accessible and, I suppose, burying your green credentials by tarmacking a footpath or bridleway. So it's always the balance there. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, anyone else? I've just got the one then, just in relation to the improvements to the roundabout onto London Road. Good to see that. Obviously, there's a real benefit to the employees on the site, but obviously the access to and from the site presumably obviously will improve. Could you give us some sort of indication of timescales when that's likely to be implemented?
Yes, so we hope to be on site by the time we've got the revised consent through and finish our archaeological investigations, which will be starting in the next couple of months. We hope to be on site in November time, and probably will be on site for 12 months building out the next phase of development. And during that time, we will be doing the improvements to Pegasus Drive. I can't tell you exactly how long that will take. I expect it will be relatively quick, i.e. it'll probably be a month or quicker, I expect. Because it's pretty minor in the grand scheme of Section 278 works. So we're just widening that mouth to the Pegasus Drive London Road roundabout, just to enable, and we've the drawings that were on there before, which was shared with you, show that the tracking has been planned so that an HGV can turn left, for example, and a car can turn right. So you can queue next to each other, or hopefully not queue for too long next to each other. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions then? No. Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming and giving us the update. Really do appreciate it. And obviously your support for our facilities as well and employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Yeah. See you soon.
You are welcome to stay if you wish to see that. Don't rush it. Feel free to depart. Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll take the bread, yeah. Thanks very much. Okay, so members, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda then, which is members' questions. Do I have any members' questions? Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to raise the venue in George's Hall. So I'm not sure what happened this weekend, but I know the weekend previous to that, there was lots of very loud music and some kind of disturbances in the town, and the music, according to local residents, went on to about 4 a.m. As I said, I don't know what happened this weekend, but my understanding is they have a temporary license that covers 3 weekends. But they've also put in an application for a permanent license. Now, what they're asking for is alcohol and music license from Monday through to Sunday, and from 11 in the morning until 3:30 the next morning. So what I wanted to raise this to see if we can bring this to a relevant committee meeting or council meeting. The comments can need to be in by the 3rd of May. But I also wanted to see if we can think about how we could perhaps deal with license applications. We're not a consultee, but we could perhaps keep an eye on applications that affect Biggleswade and perhaps come up with a mechanism for looking at them if necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. I think that's a really valid contribution. I think you're quite right. I mean, we need to have some mechanism in relation to this particular application. I think we need to give a little bit of thought around how we can formally respond if it is, I think you said 3rd of May.
The 3rd of May.
So given that our next meeting, I think, is later than that, something like the 9th of May, there may be some other mechanism we might need to consider, not necessarily at this meeting, perhaps have a think about what we can do. But beyond that, in any event, you're right, let's see if we can come create with some sort of formal mechanism to deal with the licensing applications. As you say, although we're not a formal consultee, our ward councillors at least have, I think the ward councillors have some involvement in it, but don't you think sometimes they're a formal consultee either? So, Councillor Woodhead.
Can I make a suggestion? It may not work, but I'm happy to have this on the next Town Centre Management Committee agenda next week. A broader discussion of this, if that speeds up a discussion, and we can work out the exact phrasing offline if you like. But that could be a way of its relevance, TCM, and we can have that discussion there. But no, I'd heard similar complaints as well, Councillor Albone, and it's so thank you for raising it. But it's been I think it's pretty shoddy how we're not consulted in a way on licensing issues in that way. So yeah, I'm certainly happy to hear other colleagues' views as well. Thanks.
Seems like a perfectly reasonable suggestion. That's included on the agenda next week. Okay. Any other questions, members? Councillor Russell?
Just to ask if we've heard anything back from Central Beds about the idea of a pedestrian island in St Andrews Street that we agreed on at that January meeting, I think.
Peter, have another.
I can confirm we've had nothing back from Central Beds.
Could we chase, please?
Of course.
And I think we'll make sure we minute the fact that it does need to be chased, so that it goes on the actions. Please. Anyone else? Any other? Councillor Strawn?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have been notified that the home farm development is up for consideration for marketing by Central Beds Council. I believe the chairman of the assets portfolio has offered to bring officers to the council for a meeting. Has any progress been made with regard to taking up that offer to come to the council and explain what's going on? We've just had a very good presentation from Tritax on what's happening at the other side of the A1. I think it'd be most appropriate if we could have the opportunity to find out from Central Beds exactly what their plans and observations are on that site.
Okay. So as members will be aware, I circulated that information over email. It was good to receive it. We haven't made any arrangements in regard to dates yet, but we can make those arrangements and I can get in contact with them to do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell?
I think to add to what Councillor Strawn has said, it's mentioned in the report that Central Beds have appointed Cushman and Wakefield to do some preliminary work. And I'd be interested to know what that preliminary work is and whether this council could have some input into what's happening before the site is actually sold.
An ideal opportunity now, given that CBC executive are making their decision this evening, we should understand really tomorrow. So ideal opportunity to get the ball rolling. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? No? Okay, so we'll thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda then, which is minutes. So item 7, minutes and recommendations. So we're on page 7. So firstly, for accuracy on page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12. Councillor Barrett. Yep. Minor, yeah, thank you. That's a good point. Thank you. Next, anything on page 13? Page 14. Page 15. Okay, so subject to that minor amendment, you happy with me to sign the minutes? Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Actually understand it's not a meeting. It doesn't actually tell me what's happening in that paragraph.
Valid point. I don't think. I think we noted it. That's as far as I recall. But we will check and make sure that the minute is updated accordingly. Thank you. So subject to that, I'll sign those once I've got that updated. So we'll move then on to matters arising. So we're going back to page 7. Nothing on 7. Page 8, matters arising. Page 9. page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, and finally page 15. No, okay. Thank you very much. So we'll no matters arising to consider there. So we'll move on to the next item then on the agenda, which is the meeting schedule report. Mr. Hussain, are you introducing?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly to say this item was deferred from the last town council meeting as it was a very heavy agenda, which was smoothly run through. And to thank both officers and members for having contributed to get the schedule to this state so that we can actually present it this evening as it's set out in the report and as proposed at Appendix B. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So members, any comments in relation to this report and the dates in particular? Councillor Strawn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An observation I make as current Chairman of Finance, which may not apply next year, is that there was comment this year about lack of consultation and approval by the subcommittees over the budgeting process. I don't believe that this meeting schedule actually caters for the appropriate chairman and the committees to consider the budgets for their own. I appreciate that we've had the consultation as a general rule with the whole council on an informal basis, but I think there's been a number of comments made that there should have been, it might have been a better process if it had the budgets for each individual committee had gone to those committees prior to the finance meeting when we were looking to set the precept. I don't know how the other members feel about it, but certainly I believe that was an observation, and as chairman of that particular committee that has the final overview on the precept, I would certainly welcome the input from the chairman and the other committees.
Okay, thank you. So we have a suggestion. So chairmen of the existing chairman committees, do you have any thoughts on this, or other members for that matter, any other thoughts on this? That's go on, Councillor Barrett.
It makes perfect sense to do it that way.
Okay, so what did you have in mind, Councillor Strawn, in terms of are you looking for something? One of the things that is a challenge for us is really how do we make the in particular the January meeting work, because we've got the F&GP meeting on the 16th of January, which is after effectively the first council meeting. There's a question whether or not it's the right way around, whether we should do F&GP then a second council, or are you happy with that layout? And the other thing is, at what point would you want, if taking on board your feedback on the getting committees involved, are you thinking that maybe we pull the TCM and personnel into November or into December? What's your thinking?
Well, if I may, perhaps the clerk will come back. Yes, it does seem a bit sensible for the F&GP to be before council in the normal course of events, but bearing in mind the budget process, that may not be the most practical. I bow to the officers on that, but I was actually looking that there seemed to be a few dates in November that we could possibly move other committees to have if they want to have a look at their budgets, but it's very much, I think, got to be down to the chairman of those committees as to what they're deciding. But I was just conscious that comments were made before the last finance meeting about this, and I felt as chairman of that committee that it was appropriate for me to arrange it. I've got no strong feelings, but obviously the later it is, the better from everybody's point of view. But it's got to be managed by the accounting team, and we have got a new finance manager in place, so I don't know what his observations would be on that. But I do think it's up to councillors to decide what they want. As I say, I'm comparatively neutral in that, but it was an observation that's been made, so hence it's been raised.
Thank you. Councillor Agnew and then Peter after that.
I think we probably ought to set up a reminder sometimes around the 10th of September council time, which is about right time, when we just bring it up as a reminder to the agenda, and then use one of the reserve meetings late in October or November to have it dedicated to the cause. So it gives enough time to committee people to prepare, and then probably discussion. That's a suggestion.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get an indication whether members feel, just say whether it's, you feel it's a separate meeting for each of the committees, or you feel it's a one meeting with the committee chairs, or what are you trying to get us to? Go on ahead, Councillor Barrett.
I was just going to say that I think trying to combine the financial aspects within a committee existing meeting would be a mistake, because you just don't know what the agenda is going to be before it happens. So I think having a separate meeting, perhaps with all of the chairs, specifically for one date to fix the problem, would be the right thing. Now, what that date actually is a moving feast, unfortunately. And I think you don't really know that until you get to sort of when the budgets are going to be done. So if the committee heads are able to have some flexibility around that, to just come together for one meeting, then I think that might be the way to do it.
I'm going to go to Peter first, Councillor.
So you've kind of taken the words out of my own mouth slightly. So rather than clogging up the committee system, I think it's perfectly logical what Councillor Strong was saying, and we should make sure that happens this time. There's two options, I think. Number one is that we informally have a date where we actually properly consult the chair and deputy chair of the relevant committees for proper sign-off, or we informally have a conversation with each individual committee outside of a kind of chamber type format. But actually the output of that is then reported formally to a committee, in the sense that you'll get a formal sign-off from the chair and deputy chair, and that information can flow through potentially. The key thing, the objective, is to make sure that everybody is happy with their budget, that there's no further variation, and that information flows through to FNGP and council to get reassurance that the figures are correct.
Go ahead, Councillor Barrett.
I'll just make one final comment related to that, is that it's possible some of the chairs may be new in the next year, so it may be the first time they've done it. So if they're in a meeting with other chairs that have been through that process before, it would be good for them to be in the same room at the same time.
Okay, so Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So I certainly agree, and I think it's a valid point that Councillor Strawn has made. I'm a little nervous to sort of make policy and process up on the hoof. I'm minded to suggest that we ask the clerk to write a paper which describes the budget setting process in detail and the key milestones for each committee to consider their budget. And that would serve as something that's useful, learning from what happened last year and looking at how we can improve it, but also ensuring that there's kind of a level set. You know, I guess it will be a 1 or 2 page paper that all members could then review at a future council meeting, and then hopefully we could then follow that process once we've agreed it. So perhaps that's a good way forward.
So I think that's a very credible point. We did something actually similar last year. So on 2 occasions, we put a paper to council where all members signed off the budgeting process, and we consulted with the chair of FNGP before we put that paper to council. The one thing we didn't put in that statement was actually consult with the relevant committees. Everything else went through, so kind of lesson learned, I think. Yeah.
I think, to be fair though, it was in your revised plan for this year, wasn't it? So it's I think we haven't built it here, so that's fair. So Councillor Strawn.
I think Councillor Knight's suggestion is excellent, and perhaps may I suggest that perhaps the appropriate meeting would be, say, the June meeting, as that's early enough in the financial year. And it's after the annual statutory meeting, but I think it needs to be in process. That gives a couple of months for it to be set up. So if that was a proposal from Councillor Knight, I'd happily second it.
Okay, given that we've got a proposal and a second, are you happy with that approach? Okay, but other than that, so just to be clear, what we haven't dealt with is this particular schedule of meetings. Are you happy with these? Councillor Jones.
Just a quick observation, and it's quite logical as to why, but we have a reserve meeting in every month apart from December. I appreciate it's Christmas and things are winding down a bit for the holidays. Is that something you would normally put in, even if it would be a week earlier than normal, or you wouldn't?
In previous years, we've only had the one council meeting in December anyway, so okay. There's nothing different there. So okay, so just to be clear then. Members are happy with the schedule of meetings, except the items. The proposal. So, Councillor, your proposal then accepts that these items and the additional element. So, all those in favour, then please show. That is unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Well done, thank you. We'll move on to the next item then. So this is the an email, I think, regarding supporting environmental services in their project to support and inspire Central Beds residents to reduce and reuse and recycle. Comments, please. You have the detail there. Councillor Alban.
I think this is well worth supporting. They're offering leaflets, etc., which we could make available from council offices and put stuff out on social media as appropriate. But it's definitely worthwhile supporting, I think.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodhead.
Yeah, I think we should support it as well, but I'm just curious as to how this squares with their charging for green bins, that's all. It seems to go slightly counter to their own policy, but other than that, I think we should support it, and I think it's a good idea.
Councillor Strawn.
I think the principle is absolutely fine, but I'd have far preferred it if the money had been spent on providing food waste bags and the green bins for free, rather than employing an extra person or persons. Nothing against the individual involved, but I think actually there's been a better use of money than having an individual going on about recycling. I think we all try and recycle as much as possible, but I think there would have been better ways of spending the money than on employing extra staff and then advertising it all around. I think people have generally been trying to do it, and I think that the proposals with regard to charging for certain items of waste disposal is a retrograde step.
Thank you very much for that. I'm very conscious that what this particular item is. I don't want to stray too far beyond this particular item, if you don't mind, Councillor Knight.
I agree. The decision to charge for green waste collection is absurd. I also note that Central Beds provided public waste bins in the town centre, for example, do not support recycling. So in many towns and villages, you have, you know, a compartment for plastic or tin cans.
Can I just address this point?
I just worry, isn't leaflets creating more waste, and actually it'd be better to spend the money on replacing the bins in the town?
Noted. Thank you very much. Councillor Russell.
I'm conscious you're trying to close down debate, but I think the points that people are making are very relevant. And I don't understand what this man wants to do in terms of meetings, where, who, what's he asking us to support on that? So it's one thing to say, overall, this is something that we should be supporting, but what actually are we supporting? I don't find this very informative, actually.
If I might clarify, I'm not trying to close down debate at all. I'm trying to make sure that we're focused on what the item is here. So it's not about closing debate. And the accusation suggesting I close debates down is a little bit unfair. But anyway, Councillor Jones.
I entirely agree with you, Councillor Russell. That's what I thought when I first read it. And again, with Councillor Woodhead, I love the fact that we're printing more leaflets without having a recycle bin to put them in, which goes against the grain of the conversation. My proposal would be to thank Mr. Zander for his email and ask him if he could clarify exactly what it is he would like to do so that we can support him appropriately, should that be good for the town.
Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to add to the discussion? On that basis, so all those in favour, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay, shall we move on? Item 9C, Kitelands update. Have I missed something? Councillor Jones.
I'm in there. I would really love to understand, please, if somebody can help me, why we went with option C. And we probably missed the trick, because if this is for Kitelands, probably should have consulted with Tritax, unless I've completely misunderstood. No, I think I've misunderstood.
Before you did you want to make any introduction so that members are clear on what we're doing? So that's okay. Go on, Mr. Saini.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for Councillor Jones's comments as well. I mean, just to set some of the sort of context to this, a long while ago we had raised this whole project on several occasions, actually, with the town council and at committee stage as well, which had been discussed in terms of where would phase one of this project manifest itself in terms of location. In the original agreement, which was following a resolution, which was signed up with the successful installers, after the evaluation had all gone through and everything for the site, it was agreed to be location 1. Location 1 is the, if you like, I haven't got the map in front of me essentially, but it's the triangular bit where when you're approaching the site from the east end, going past the school, and you've got the toddlers area, existing area on the left-hand side, you come immediately up to like a crossroad path where it splits into a triangle. And at that triangular point there, if you like, there was always going to be sufficient space to install 5 items of brand new play equipment, which is the total 5 for this project. So what's happened since all of that, and at a previous meeting, obviously, where this project came up again to discuss potential problems with the subsurface areas, we got a resolution, as the report says, to go back out and get a proper, in quotes, subsurface CAT scan done, which has now been done and is attached here. And subsequent to that work which was done, that has now pointed out that all 3 locations, so location 1, location 2, and location 3, are all clear of any kind of anything that's dangerous in terms of being able to excavate and conduct the work, albeit one of the areas needs to be manually excavated, which is fine as well, according to the installers. Locations 2 and 3 at the previous meeting, which were discussed, it was deemed, members deemed it to be prudent, obviously, to get this CAT scan done to show that where eventually, if we get into a phase 2, hypothetically speaking, for this project, with further funds to arrive in due course, hypothetically, then it would be good to get the all clear, obviously, the first time round that this could be done. That has now been achieved. So all 3 of those locations are clear. What's happened is we've progressed with work, essentially, based on the original resolution, which was for location 1 in that kind of area, in the kind of pyramid sort of area, if you like, to the site. And to provide a bit more information from this report since, actually, the works have now for this week paused because they've now 3 out of 5 pieces of play equipment which have gone in, and foundations are drying, so albeit the weather is the way it is. The installers are going to return to site next week, and they're confident they can finish the entire package, if you like, by the 30th of April, which is actually what Tritec's colleagues here were saying as part of their presentation. That's that side of things. On the other side of things as well, officers have been looking into kind of signage, which is part of this, which Councillor Jones was raising. We've only done a quick bit of research, not quick bit of research, some research online to come up with 3 potential, shall we say, initial signage points, A, B, and C on this document. Recommending point C, but I mean, that's up for discussion for members, obviously, to determine. And the bit that's missing here, I'll be brief now, is that we've written out to Tritec's colleagues, not the ones present tonight necessarily, but the other ones who have been on leave and actually coming back. But we're requesting from them, if you like, what kind of signage they would like as well, because this needs to as well be agreed with them. Also, the other thing is that we're trying to keep in mind is that anything that is selected is repeatable elsewhere, so it doesn't look completely different and out of sorts with other play areas. And finally, we're asking them for a form of words as well, what they would like to see, so we can then come back here and mix that all in with members' input. I'll pause there.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we, I just wanted to say, actually thank officers for progressing the CAT scan, because I think the initial indication was that it might take 5 or 6 weeks, and actually it was turned around in less than that, so which allowed then the project to progress at the sort of on the 25th. So that's the first thing. I'm going to go over to Councillor Jones, and I know your point, Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saini. That's super helpful, and I echo the Chair's thanks. My questions were around why option C. My thought process went along the same as yours. How does it complement other signage in the town? So I think about Franklin's, for example. How do we complement so it feels consistent as part of the community? But I was really intrigued to understand why officers. There must be a reason that you selected option C, because in my mind I was thinking something attractive, but also, I suppose, serious in terms of safety messaging, but was more attractive, I suppose, to be read, to encourage people to read it. Personally, and it is a personal thing, it is not, I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else, I look at option C and I almost recoil in wanting to read it, whereas I would want parents to read any safety equipment instructions we put out. So that's why I was intrigued to understand the method.
Okay, I'm going to go Councillor Strong, then Councillor Russell.
I was trying to understand why option C was the recommended one, because the playground safety, is that intended to be, is it the wording that's being looked at that, or is it just the nature of the signage? Because that is an individual one, but certainly having seen a sign in Biggleswade not long after I came here, which had round a nice grass area which said ball games prohibited, and having seen some youngsters kicking a ball around, I was just going to point out to them the fact that they shouldn't be kicking balls around when they said what's prohibited be. And I said, okay, if you arrest the case. So I think it wasn't clear for me what exactly the intention was with regard to the options there, whether it was going to be a playground safety message or whether it was going to be explaining what the options were. So I'm not necessarily enamoured of option C anyway in terms of the layout. It doesn't look quite the same thing as we have in other places around the town. But it's really trying to establish why option C was being a recommended option.
Before you respond, Councillor Russell.
Can we kick out option C? It looks vile. I propose immediately that we kick out anything that looks like that. I think the points that have been made, being serious about it, is that it needs to be in line. We've just done Franklin's. Why don't we have something similar there? I'm against too much health and safety stuff on signs like this, and everybody will ignore it, and it just makes the sign look cluttered. What we do need is Tritac's lost the word, but their sign, their emblem. And as you say, we need to know that they're happy, that it actually says that the improvements are done with Tritac's funding effectively. So can we get back to something that's perhaps a green sign, as the town council's green, similar to what's at Franklin's, and obviously with the town council's emblem and all that, and just keep it quite simple. If we are obliged by law to put some health and safety, can we keep it succinct, please? That's my proposal.
Go on, Councillor Saini.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, so right, option B was the option preferred by myself, and the reason for that is actually the one in the middle here, is actually because it's we already have at least one of these signs, certainly at the Dan Elburn car park, just out on the edge of it, past on the green wheel, which alludes to the green wheel. The only difference with that is that that is a it's a sort of at about 45 degrees, the actual board itself. So it's got vertical stands, it's green, it's the same kind of perspex cover, if you like, weather resistant, with wording in there. So that would be the most instantly recognizable. The other signs here are here just for kind of an indication, because color scheme would be completely different anyway, according to what we want. And of course, the wording would be totally different as well. So it wasn't intended to have wording there as sort of as a suggestion at all.
Okay.
One last thing from me,
Yeah.
UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which is a separate application we've put in, has something like, off the top of my head, something like between 10 and 12 potential signs for this kind of purpose as well. So that's kind of a different avenue, if you like, but the end
Right.
result is that we're going to end up with more signs. So they all do need to be very, very similar.
So I think what we said is we should take on board the feedback from Tritax, get the wording, make something that's more agreeable colour-wise and consistent. We should have corporate approach to it. My comment was wordy, exclamation mark, and I think that sort of sums up. It doesn't need to be that. It needs to be something that people are going to look at and pay attention to. Before we go on, Councillor.
I have made of what I thought was a formal proposal, and I don't know whether anybody's prepared to second it.
Go on, Councillor.
I'll second that proposal. So I'm a bit confused because the paper recommends option C. You're one of the authors of the paper and you prefer option B. So I'm a bit confused. I mean, to my mind, option C is appalling. We need something that's inviting, that encourages people to go and play there. It also needs to be durable. So I would lean towards something based around option A, to be honest, because it looks like it's probably lower maintenance. But I second Councillor Russell's proposal.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment? Any feedback? No? Good. Okay. Thank you. All those in favour in that approach then, please show. Anyone against? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. That is carried. Shall we move on? So we're on item 9D, Halifax closure. Councillor Woodhead, would you like to introduce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, to be honest, the motion. Obviously, colleagues will be aware the committee clerk circulated a document that was produced by the Halifax PLC about the closure process and alternative branches and so on and so forth. But essentially, the branch in the town centre is closing 31st of July this year. And I think we need to at least draw attention, contact the Halifax and to express our, as I'm proposing here, our disappointment that that branch is closing, because it's another service in the town centre that's being removed essentially. So that's kind of what my motion seeks to do. It's just sort of we can reach out and just try and express our displeasure, if that's what colleagues agree with, to Halifax. And I've mentioned a couple of other points in the motion as well that I think are important and need support as well. But that's for colleagues to decide.
Councillor Barrett. Thank you, Councillor Woodhead.
I agree completely, but one additional thing I wondered if we could raise at this point again, and we've discussed it before here, is about a banking hub. That if these two are going to get together in one particular building, would they actually be sponsoring others perhaps to get together as well? It could be a catalyst for that as an idea. So just a suggestion at this point.
Okay, Councillor Strawn, then Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the proposal. I think actually that we could point out a couple of further points to them, because if I recollect the supporting documentation correctly, it was pointing people to Letchworth and to Bedford as the nearest branches. Now, trying to get to those places is impractical. It's all very well when you've got lots of easy communications, but it is not easy to get there, particularly for those who don't have their own transport. And it's going to be very time consuming. It's not fair on those disadvantaged members of the community of whatever nature in terms of trying to get there. And it is a retrograde step. Councillor Woodhead quite rightly points out the fact that Halifax is part of the Lloyds group overall. And I think that's points well made. The other thing is, I noticed that the Halifax were prepared to consult with lots of people, MPs, etc., but not the Biggleswade Town Council. Now, I think that is a grave discourtesy to this town and to this council, that they aren't even prepared to actually approach us directly. And I would like to think that the proposal might continue, saying of concern that we weren't even brought into the consultation process.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yes, I've just recently been to a very small town, about half the size of Biggleswade, and it had a banking hub, which is just a black building. So there's no particular reds, blues, greens, whatever colours for any bank. And it's just a list outside of which banks you could go in and use. And it was a smallish building. It must reduce the costs for all the banks, I would have thought. And that seems like a perfectly sensible idea. If they can do it in a small town of 10,000 people, I'm pretty sure they could do it for Biggleswade.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Abbott?
Just regarding banking hubs, I believe that it wouldn't be possible to have a banking hub until the last bank has actually departed.
Go on, Councillor Thomas.
That's not quite true, because there were several banks open in this small town of 10,000 people. So the banking hub is the first thing I passed and noted as I went into town. And then there was a huge HSBC, and I actually went into the bank just to say I'd been into a bank recently.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell?
I think the answer is that Councillor Alban is right. If it's a formal banking hub as supported by the government machinery, I suspect what you're seeing is something that's more local, which is what I think Councillor Woodhead is suggesting we might have the beginnings of if we had Halifax and Lloyds in the same building, which would make perfect sense. I think that's what the situation is. I think you're both right in your own way.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Jones?
So can I propose that we accept your motion? We agree that, and we add a line in potentially that suggests to Halifax that should they be wanting to trial or use a town as a guinea pig for some banking hub in the future, we would be happy to enter into discussions about that with them and put our hands up and say, happy to try it.
Councillor
I
Barrett?
would suggest further investigating the idea of an informal banking hub. Would be the wording I'd use to add to that.
So further investigate the options around a banking hub, something along those
We'd be
lines.
willing to enter into discussions around that.
Okay. Councillor Knight?
So I'm sort of broadly supportive, but I also understood that banking hubs were broadly operated by the post office. And a number of them have the post office branding. And of course, very recently, new management's taken over at the post office here, and they're promoting the services very hard that they're providing to the community. So I don't know, I feel we need to understand who provides these hubs a little bit more. I've just Googled it and everything's pointing out post office operated banking hubs. And maybe we need to invite the postmaster from the post office to come and speak to council if they're local, because they say they're very active. They're actively talking and publishing and promoting the services they're providing, and they could probably help us understand what services they can provide and the limitations of their services much better as well.
I'm going to go to Councillor Barrett first, then Councillor Strawn, if I may.
I think Councillor Knight's correct, but I think there's a difference between the cash in and out services which the post office are providing and the additional services that banks provide that they would like to suggest go online, when a lot of people would prefer still to go and talk to someone. And I think the banking hubs, the informal banking hubs, provide those sort of face-to-face services. That's what we're talking about. I absolutely agree. The cash in and out type services, the post office provide a perfectly good service.
Councillor Strawn, thank you, Councillor Barrett.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're now getting in danger of getting ourselves totally confused. There is a proposal with regard to the Halifax, and I think that should be stuck as one. If the council then wishes to consider something with regard to banking hubs or otherwise, I don't think that's appropriate to go with this particular proposal. It would need to be a separate proposal rather than confusing it with Councillor Woodhead's.
Okay, so thank you. I was just consciously not trying to stifle debate. So, before we go to the vote, then, is this related to very comment?
If we do have any conversations with the post office for anything in the future, there's new owner, it's under new management at Stratton Way as well. So just to remember, we have 2 post office in the community, not 1.
Okay, thank you. So we have a proposal which was seconded in relation to the motion, and it is the reference about investigating a community hub, etc. All those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Shall we move on then to item 9E, which is the football pitches? Mr. Hussain, did you wish to introduce? Is that Mr. Tarrant?
Okay, so this picks up a more detailed PLOS report that was recently considered by them on the 2nd of April. It looks at upgrading and investing a sum of money, and it's identifying the nature of the work in paragraph 2. And it will support the development of all 8 pitches. PLOS were very supportive of this and we're keen to make it happen. And we're looking to draw down the investment of up to 7,450 from the general reserve. And I've included PLOS's resolution in the contents of this paper. Thank you.
Okay. Comments, please, members. Councillor Russell.
We all know the deficit in football facilities in the town. This is one way of trying to address that until perhaps more durable solutions can be found. But, you know, we've got these facilities. We should make them available, properly available to people in the town. So I'm happy to go with the recommendation in the report.
Is that a proposal?
But, yeah.
Seconded. Any other comments then? No. Okay. In which case, I'll take it to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Again, that looks unanimous. Thank you. Well done. We'll move on to the next item then. So we are now at planning applications. So item 10 plan application. So first one, 10A, 15, 15A, 15B Hitchin Street, conversion of the property from a 1 5-bedroom self-contained flat to 3 flats. Comments, please. Councillor Alban?
Yeah, and I know that the housing strategy and implementation officer is not happy with the design and access statement and is indicating that a new plan is needed, which references adaptable homes. So there is one 4-person flat, I think, but it's not necessarily, or it may be, but it's not clear from the plans that that's able to be an adaptable home. So that's what the officer is recommending. I would move that we have no objection to this planning application, but point out that that should be included. The change that the housing strategy and implementation officer is asking for.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Barrett. Any other comments in relation to this one? Okay, all those in favour in that approach then please show. Okay, again unanimous, thank you very much. 10B, 16 Bellflower Gardens, this is the erection of a 2.4 metre high fence against existing 2.2 metre high fence for additional screening. Comments? Councillor Jones?
I struggled a bit with this one. I could see that there were 2 responses against, but I couldn't find them to see what they were. So I don't know if that's typical, because I haven't done that before, but it worries me that we don't know what the reasons were. So I'd caution on that one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Strawn?
An observation, Mr. Mayor. Historically, I think in planning terms, 2 metres high fences has been the standard norm as the height of a fence. So 2.4 is raising it above the normal parameters. And I would be concerned that this might be setting a precedent, particularly if you've got other properties around. Is everybody going to want to go to 2.4? So it's understanding why it needs to be 2.4, because 2 metres has been accepted for some time. You've got to be over 6'6" to see over the top unless you're wearing high heels. And even then you've got to be having 6'6", I think, with high heels to see over it. So I don't really see the merit of it personally.
Thank you for that explanation, Councillor Strawn. That's really helpful. That's an image I don't want to progress. Thank you. Councillor Barrett?
I agree with Councillor Strong, but having read the papers, the various officers from Central Beds are actually reasonably happy with it and saying the changes are actually minimal. There is no restriction on the height of the fences there. But I do suggest that we do subject to neighbours.
Okay, so
objection subject to neighbours.
So I think this is a first proposal. So are we saying no objection subject to neighbours? Any other comments? So do I have a seconder for that approach then, please? Councillor Alban, so we're all happy with that?
What are our options as a town council when we can see that there are residents who are unhappy about it, but we don't understand the reasons for that? Do we leave that to CBC or? I
think if we haven't got that at this point, CBC would have access to that information. Okay. We're making a judgment based on the information we have for us. Councillor Russell.
I suspect that people who are objecting are neighbouring properties, and it depends where the sun comes into a garden. So if the fence goes higher, it might stop sun coming to somebody's terrace or something. And I suspect that that's what the objections are. So if we're saying subject to neighbours, perhaps we could just reinforce that by saying subject to neighbours, because we're concerned about neighbouring properties. You know, just to emphasise that we are concerned, which I think would pick up Councillor Jones.
Happy with that approach, Councillor Knight?
So I think I'll probably vote against this proposal. But as you know, there are a couple of people opposing it. It's not clear why. To my mind, 2 metres is adequate for a hard fence in a private dwelling rear garden. And that's what you can do without planning permission. And of course, you can grow plants above that. And it's not clear to me from the picture that's included in the application, is that a stock picture of the fence or is that a picture of the location? But it clearly shows vegetation above what looks like a 2 metre fence. So I I think there might be vegetation there already, but I'm certainly not comfortable supporting this. And I think subject to neighbours, for me, feels like support of it.
Okay. Any other comments, please? So I've got a proposal, seconded. So we're going to take it to the vote then. All those in favour, please show. Against and abstentions. So that is carried. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to next item then, which is number 70 to 10C 72 Potton Road, 2-storey side extension, removal existing single-storey extension. Comments, please. Councillor Russell.
It's a huge extension, but I note that it's next to the corner house. So the large extension is to the bottom of somebody's garden, not next to their garden. So I don't think there should be any objection to this.
No, I agree. I think it's exactly that. So is that proposal, no objection, subject to neighbours, yeah? Seconded by Councillor Barrett. All those in favour then, please. Okay, that's unanimous again. 10D, 5 Eagle Farm Road, proposed ground floor and first floor extensions. Councillor Jones.
I think very similar to the one at Bellflower Garden, where we reinforce the subject to neighbours because it seemed like a considerable change. So just reinforcing that again to make sure, again, thinking about gardens and apex and stuff like that.
I think in this one is actually, I mean, the aesthetic, I think it will actually improve the look of the road, the actual the design of it looks to be pretty good. So I take on board your view there. But so what we're saying is no objection, subject to neighbours again. Yeah. Okay. All happy with that? Yep. Okay. So we're on 10E Ivor Valley School, installation of 1-3 classroom modular block for a temporary period of 2 years. Comments? Come on, Councillor Jones, if you want to.
Yeah, I was just going to say no objection, but as long as the officer concerns with the accuracy of the plans are answered, which one would hope that they would be before anything is done. But as long as that's addressed, no objections.
Okay, Councillor Dower.
There's also concern from a tree and landscape officer about the impact of the car parking area on trees that are already there, particularly the root area. So I think they're recommending an arboriculture impact assessment. So as long as that's carried out, I don't see an issue. So perhaps we can add that to the proposal that is taken into account too.
So no objection, subject to neighbours and an arboreal assessment.
No, there was
the accuracy of the plans for me that covered everything, because there were quite a lot of little finer points that needed nailing down looking at some of the comments. So yeah. Happy.
Anything else?
Just in addition, that the builder is written to make sure they take care with regards to dust and noise around there, because there's lots of neighbours backing onto that area.
So there's 3 elements to that. Catherine, have you got those? Because I'm not going to repeat them. So all those in favour then please show. Thank you very much. That again is unanimous. Well done. 10F Warehouse Bonds Lane, variation of condition for planning permission. So change from storage to 2 offices. Comments, please. Councillor Alban.
It is a variation, so they have got permission to do this, but it seems to be quite a technical change regarding the works to the roof, installation of solar panels, etc. It all seemed pretty okay as to my reading of it anyway. Yeah. So I would move no objection.
That's seconder for that. Any other comments?
There was just an additional comment in there from the ecologist around they need to search very clearly for bats. They've got a real concern there may be some there, so they must do that. And they've said in there that they must stop any works if they come across anything.
Okay. So our comment will be no objection, subject to neighbours and then compliance with no. Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay. That doesn't. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Councillor North. Right. So we'll move on to item 11. This is the plan and application outcomes. Any comments on that one, please? On the page. Councillor Russell.
I was looking at the shortlist, it's the bottom of page 41, preserve trees, and they refused consent. And I just wonder whether officers could get in touch with Central Beds. Perhaps I should have done it, but there's been an awful lot of tree work there and a lot of cutting back. And I wonder whether work has been done against what's been allowed here. So if you could just ask if the tree officer can look at that site and see what's been done.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Any other comments in relation to this report? Other than, so I take it we're noting?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 12 then, accounts. You will see the report, there's nothing on this report. Peter, do you want to speak up?
Things have slightly changed since I wrote this comment, only to say that we've now closed down our accounts for the old financial year, and I reported that to the Chair of Finance and General Purposes. I propose to bring the February accounts and the close down of accounts to the annual statutory meeting on the 14th of May, the detail associated with that, if members are supportive of that. Yep. And I can report verbally now that the accounts have completely closed that we overspent to the tune of £775.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments, please? Anyone wish to say? Councillor Russell.
Just definitely not material, £700.
It's not really, is it? Okay.
Can I make a second comment if that's okay?
Please do, yes.
And secondly, we're in the process now of completing the AGAR, of course. I'm suggesting that the AGAR come to council probably on the 11th of June, if members are supportive of that. That seems like a sensible date.
Okay, again, happy with that.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any dissent there, so shall we, thank you for that. We'll move on to the next item then. So this item 13, items for information. So this is proposed temporary road closure. I think we know what this one relates to. Any comments on this one? Or are we, go on, Councillor Jones?
I'm absolutely fine with it. I just had, did we have a final confirmation on what route was chosen? But did I miss that?
I'm hesitating. I don't personally recall. Was it not at the last meeting?
I think Mr. Hussaini knows more, but we're waiting for the Safety Advisory Group, I think, to get back to us. Is that right?
Because this sort of implies that the route has been identified and selected, that's all. Because I'm absolutely fine with it, but I was just curious, that's all.
I think, correct.
Thanks, sorry, that just, so if this is about the 5 kilometre run route,
Yeah,
and
yes.
specifically for this, we have not heard back yet. The only thing we've had is one email from the lead officer of the Safety Advisory Group to say that, you know, she seems that she's behind it, essentially, the spirit of it and all the rest of it, but that still needs to be looked at. So we're still awaiting a result, an output from them.
Go on, Councillor Strong.
I think it goes a little bit further in some respects. Nothing, no objection to this whatsoever. But as a council, we've been supporting of this event, and it sounds as though it's moved on quite a bit. Are we going to get some kind of report, whether to the next council meeting or informally in between, just to keep us up to date on exactly what the progress is with regard to this event?
Go ahead, Peter.
Just to confirm, we're finishing off the documentation now, but a detailed report will go to the next TCM.
Lovely, thank you very much. And then we've got, so we noted that one, and then the next one is proposed temporary road closure for London Road. You seem to know what that relates to. Any comments on that one? Councillor Knight.
I don't think I have any objections. I think my concern is the diagram that's included in the pack, and I've got that digitally as well. I think that there's a problem with the resolution of it, because no matter how much you zoom in, it's completely illegible. So I've got no idea what it says. So if I could ask officers to try to ensure that information we've received in packs is legible, please, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Come on, Councillor Alva.
Yes, it's closed for lining, basically. And I just wonder if they're going to have the white lines go around the potholes that were going all the way down London Road. How are they going to work that?
not quite sure at that junction, Councillor Alban, but but you're quite right. I think that there's a challenge with London Road. When I first read it, I thought, how are they going? Actually, the initial response is how they're going to do it with the potholes down London Road, but it's not the whole of London Road. I don't think so. If it were, it would be presenting more of a challenge. I think so. Okay, so we're going to note that then. We're going to then move on to item 14, public open session. Anyone in public wishing to speak? So on that basis, happy that we'll propose that we adjourn the meeting. Not adjourn the meeting. Where are we? I've lost my way. So we're going to